That's funny.
Penny, thanks for being here. What got you into theater?
You know, I don't remember a time in my life when I wasn't in the theater.
Okay, so how young was that? 3, 2, baby?
Three.
Really?
At 3, I was tap dancing on Wayne West Juvenile Theater in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was a live Saturday morning television show with, all kinds of different, kind of like a variety show for children. And I had a partner, Bobby Goodman, and he and I tap danced, and we were really good. I mean, we were really, really good. We traveled all over Nebraska and all over the Midwest, really, and appeared on various television shows.
Wow.
But I remember that was when I was 3, and then when I was 5, I did Sound of Music. So that was the first theatrical thing that I did, but it was when I was 3, and then I went into actually doing theater when I was 5, and continued on throughout my entire life. I mean, I've done over 75 musicals.
Wow. Nebraska. I heard good things about Nebraska. The things and I wouldn't have expected it.
Nebraska
in my mind.
An unusual place. I mean, my father really was a jazz piano player, and he had gone out to Los Angeles, but his father was a Greek immigrant and was being kind of screwed over by the IRS. So my dad came back to Nebraska. His best friend was Johnny Carson.
Ooh.
And so my dad and Johnny Carson used to pull these pranks on people in Lincoln all the time, and they were very, very close. And there was another guy that was kind of with them. His name was David Doyle. I don't know if you know who that is, but anyway,
yes.
He was also a friend of theirs, and so it was kind of an unusual place because there were a lot of people that came out of Nebraska. Of course, Fred Astaire and his sister came out of Nebraska, and Johnny Carson, and quite a few actors and actresses and talk show people and dancers, and I think it's because the Midwest has notoriously got a love of the arts and the theater, and really people used to ask me when they would find out that I was from Nebraska, they say, well, what's it like living on a farm? Well, I don't know. I mean, my father was a millionaire. We lived in a big mansion. I was so far away from a farm. I had no idea what living on a farm was like, but, I used to tell him, oh, it's hard. We have to get up in the morning and get the eggs. But my father was a neat guy. God, he was my best friend. He was a neat guy. Loved the theater, loved music. He was a fabulous piano player. He took piano from the guy who plays in Casablanca. That's who he took piano from for many, many years.
Wow, yes.
And my father played piano for Ella Fitzgerald. Mm-hmm. And so he was an accomplished musician. And so was my mother. My mother was an excellent singer. And so it was my mother and father, and then I have 3 sisters. All of us played a musical instrument. Mm-hmm. All of us took dancing. Mm-hmm. All of us took probably 4 or 5 different kinds of dancing, including ballroom dancing and tap and modern and ballet and then all of us took piano, and some of us took another instrument as well, and we all took voice, and we all took theater lessons. Matter of fact, I studied for many, many years at the Lincoln Community Playhouse with Lou Hall, who was a wonderful teacher of acting for children, and she was Vivian Vance's sister.
Ooh.
So, Nebraska has this reputation for, putting out a lot of people. The University of Nebraska has a wonderful theater department, and the community theater there is fantastic. I mean, the Lincoln Community Theater, the Omaha Community Theater, they're really top-notch community theaters and do wonderful shows and really put a lot of money into it. And then for years and years, I also did Pinewood Bowl, which was this big 15,000 seat amphitheater in Lincoln, and we would run 2 or 3 musicals every summer, with big backing and big money, and the Lincoln Symphony were most of the players in the pit, and so I did a lot of shows out there, a lot of musicals out there, and so it was a great place to grow up. If you love the theater and the arts and music and everything, it's a great place to grow up. And then I was so blessed because my father loved the arts and, was willing and had the monetary, ability to send all of us to, dancing and singing and piano. I studied piano for 17, 18 years and I studied voice for probably 15, 16 years and certainly dance for over 20 years. So it was a great place to grow up and a great family to grow up in.
Wow. So it sounds like I hear the largest venue you've been in. What's the smallest venue you've ever been in?
Let's see, the smallest venue. Well, I certainly haven't told you anywhere near the largest one I've been in, but.
Oh, even bigger than 15,000 seats?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was in Hare and I was in huge mass, auditoriums, 60,000 seats, 70,000 seats. The smallest place that I ever performed, was probably my backyard, because I was also one of those kids that, with the neighbors got together to do a show, and, we're going to do a show in the garage or we're going to do a show in somebody's, I'll never forget down, not only maybe 2-3 blocks from where I grew up, was a guy that had this old barn in the back of his property that was a theater. And we go down there and he would let us use it. It was never ever used in any professional way or even in an amateur way. But he had built this theater in this old barn and sure enough, he'd let the kids perform in there.
Really?
So, talk about, growing up and being able to perform theater in the barn. I did. So
what else was there other than you guys got to use this place, the theater? Was it summer stock? What was the
no, actually the guy that owned that property was, had been in theater his whole life too and just loved the theater. And I think he had always planned on doing something with it. He just never really
never did.
Really never did. Yeah. So he kind of let the kids in the neighborhood use it. But when I say kids in the neighborhood, my gosh, even in my high school class, I had, one guy in my high school class now, for the last 23 years has designed sets for the Metropolitan Opera. I have another guy in my class that's with Jim Henson. I have had 2 people in my graduating class that have appeared on Broadway. I've had 3 people in my class that all own dance schools, and on and on and on.
Sure.
So one of the guys in my class was the guy that originally brought several different shows to Broadway. He owned a theater in New York for many, many years, and so brought shows there. So I had a really interesting group of people around me when I was growing up. Really interesting.
So what do you do in real life?
Yeah, that's people have said that to me. They say you're really funny in real life. You're really funny in real life. Well, I've done several different things in real life. Actually, I went to the University of Nebraska for 1 year, and I heard that they were auditioning for a touring company of hair down in Kansas City. So I went down to Kansas City and auditioned, and I got in. And I'm lucky enough to say I appeared on Broadway because they trained us. We had to go to New York, and I never really I actually did perform on Broadway for maybe 2.5 weeks, but then I went on the road. They sent
Better
me
than
out
zero.
That's right. They sent me out on the road where I was for several years, ending up in Los Angeles, and I dropped out of hair and joined the cast of Jesus Christ Superstar. And went, which we did at first at the Universal Amphitheater, and then I went on the road with that as well. But I was able to go to the University of Nebraska for 1 year, and I really liked school. One of those people that probably could go to school for the rest of my life if I, had the money to do so. But after I came back to Los Angeles and joined Jesus Christ Superstar, I met some people that were working down at the University of Southern California, and so I knew that at some point, if I came back to LA, I would want to go back to school. So I came back to LA and did go back to school and have a degree. I have a double major in music and in theater. Directing was my thing, directing. And I directed a lot of shows at the University of Southern California and directed a lot of shows at UCLA as well. Got involved with the theater community in Los Angeles a lot. I did a lot of shows in LA at various theaters, community theaters, children's theaters, community theaters, professional theaters. I did Mary C. Brown and the Hollywood Sign at the Schubert, which was a professional show. And so, you know, I really have always been involved in the theater. However, it was kind of funny because I was always that person that, you know, was the one person people could go to. Like, everybody wanted to start a theater, but nobody knew where to get the money. Or
minor detail.
Yeah, minor detail. Nobody ever knew where to get the money, or they didn't want to have that role. You know, they wanted to be on the stage.
They would have the fun.
So I was always the one that they went to because I could write. And so I did go to the Grantsmanship Center for several years, studied writing grants. And, you know, used to be that, you know, go-to person to, you know, go to when you needed some money. I've written a lot of grants for nonprofit arts organizations and have written many grants for myself. I started my own theater company in San Diego with a grant that I wrote. So I did that, and I did a lot of, you know, writing of grants and getting involved in different, you know, helping people start their own theaters and that kind of thing in Los Angeles and in San Diego as well. And at one point I decided, I got to get out of LA. It was just wearing me down, and it was just really crazy there. And it was, you know, the 70s, so it was a crazy period of time. So I decided, I got to get out of here. So, one of my good friends, Sam Shepard, who's a famous playwright, said to me, why don't you come to Santa Fe? It's so wonderful here. And so I moved to Santa Fe and lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for several years. And it was really weird because I loved Santa Fe and it was great, but I really missed LA. I really missed LA. And I decided, well, let me go back and see what I can do. I went back and I started working for King World. I got a job working for King World. Yeah. And I was actually the VP of their creative affairs department for King World. And I worked very closely with the King brothers and with a variety of different kind of crazy things. I produced a show called Dick Clark's Nighttime.
Okay.
And it was with Dick Clark, and it was a late night show that had a variety of different guests and mostly musical guests and that type of thing. And it was a great show, but unfortunately it did not have a uniform time slot across the United States. And in television, this is something that will kill you. If you do not have, if you're on in one market at 12:30 and another market at 12:45 and another market at 1 and another market at 1:30, it's very difficult to ever get a audience that's going to, it's very difficult. And I don't know if you know anything about King World, but these King brothers were really, well, really it was their dad that started it. He was a brilliant guy because they didn't have anything called syndication, barter syndication before the King brothers. And so they made a fortune bartering all these shows. Well, their dad bought Little Rascal. When who would think that anybody would ever want to watch the Little Rascals again? But he bought it and he sold it all over the place. Matter of fact, he didn't sell it. He gave it away for free. And he told these television stations, I'm going to give you this free programming. And everybody at that point was needing programming because there were so many cable stations that were coming into being at that time. He said, I'll give you this programming. Just give me 2 national spots out of it. So that's how the guy made his money. It in. Yes. Because then he was able to go back and resell that time to advertisers for a lot of money, and they became millionaires. But they hired me to be the head of their creative affairs department. And then I kind of finagled my way into producing, and I produced this show for Dick Clark and King World called Dick Clark's Nighttime. And I wanted to do some more producing, but I realized that in Los Angeles, all the producers were male. And number 2, they all had law degrees. So I said, okay, if I want to be serious about this, I cannot compete if I'm not on the same level. So I went to law school. And mind you, at the time, I was working I was working probably 60 hours a week for Mark Wilson, very famous magician. And I did produce some shows for him too, even shows here in Houston that he did down at the Six Flags. Some Halloween shows that he did down at Six Flags. And I loved working for Mark. He was a great guy. He came to my graduation from law school, and he performed at my graduation. He was just great. My graduation party. But anyway, I went to work for Mark, and I was working like 60 hours a week. I was a single mother with 2 toddlers. I'd gotten married to an actor, and my ex, who's the father of my children, he still lives in San Diego. He's an actor down in San Diego, and I met him in San Diego when I went down there to start a theater company, and I started a theater company in San Diego and met JM and met a lot of the other guys that were working at the San Diego Rep, and did a show down at the Rep. That was the first thing I'd done in San Diego, and that's where I met Whoopi, and she and I started living together down in San Diego. And so I did a lot of shows down in San Diego, but eventually went back to Los Angeles, and then came back around through Santa Fe. But I did go to law school. I went to the Southwestern University School of Law there in Los Angeles. Worked 60 hours a week and went to law school at night. And I remember they gave me a scholarship one year, and they said, here's a scholarship for you. And I went, wow, that's amazing. I didn't even apply for the scholarship.
Right.
Why do I get this scholarship? And they said, well, you're the only person that qualifies, because we've had this scholarship for the last 6 years, and it was supposed to be given to a single mother who was in night school, and you're the only one you're the only one we've ever had. And it was funny because I did feel good. I had people come up to me and say, that first year, so many people quit. There's probably 400, 500 people in your law school class, and at the end of the first year, there's about 100. And then by the time graduation comes around, there's about 50.
Right.
But I did have several people say to me, I thought about dropping out of law school a lot of times, but then I'd think about you, and I'd think to myself, my God, if she can do it, I certainly can. Because it was, I must say, having 2 toddlers, being single, working 60 hours a week, and going to law school at night. I have no idea how I did it. I really
you gave up sleep.
Yeah, well, that was one thing I
did.
did. But if you would ask me, how did you do that? I don't know. I didn't think about it, because if I would have stopped to think about it, I probably would not have been able to do it.
Yeah, but you had incredible drive, determination. You had a goal.
I did. I did very much. And when I got out of law school, I actually practiced law for several years, and I got kind of interested in something that I didn't think I'd be interested in, which was actually practicing law, because I really did it to become a producer. Right. I really didn't do it to become a lawyer.
Right.
But I kind of got interested in the law, and I got interested in being in the courtroom, which, being theatrical is like, just comes second nature to you if you're a theatrical person at all. Being in in a courtroom is great. So I did a couple years of that, and I started my own firm, and I represented a lot of actors and musicians, and got a lot of people record deals and that kind of thing. And I worked for several major distribution companies distributing films. So I was still involved in the entertainment business that way. But I really loved, the live theater was always my main thing, and I always loved the live theater. So I never, ever gave it up. I was always in between all of these things. I was always doing a summer theater program with some children, or I was directing something at the Los Angeles Community Playhouse, or I was directing something at the E Street Theater in San Diego, or something. I was always involved with live theater, because I really, really, really love live theater, and so I've always been involved with it up until really today. But I have had a very unusual, to say the least, life and background and career in the theater.
Well, I think you've got a lot of life lessons that you could teach all of us. We'll ask just a few of those questions. For those that want to do professional theater, dance, what would you tell them?
Well, I think that the number one thing is to really determine whether you have the talent, because I have seen so many people that have been lied to. I just think it's heinous and just the most horrible thing when some, theater teacher in Podunk, Iowa tells the guy, oh, you can go out to Los Angeles and, get in the television, or you can go to New York and get on Broadway. And they just don't have enough talent to do it because, the worst thing about the entertainment business is that it's so incredibly difficult to get in, to get your foot in the door. And one of the reasons it's so hard to get your foot in the door is it's so competitive. There are so many people that are good.
Right.
And then on top of that, you have to have this other thing, which is called luck.
Yes.
So it's not just how good you are.
Nope.
There's also a modicum of it that's luck. Now, some of that luck I can actually help people with, because some of that luck just is knowing the right person to talk to, or, getting an introduction to the right person. And that takes a lot of networking.
Yes.
And a lot of getting to know people and going to parties and understanding who's who in the business. And if you're not into doing that, then forget it, because you can't. And I've always, taught this to people that have come to me to help them get into the business. You can't expect to just hire a manager or hire an attorney and they're going to do it all for you, because that's why so many people get ripped off, is because they just expect somebody to do it all for them. They don't know enough about the industry themselves. And so they sort of let themselves get taken advantage of. You have to know a lot about it and you have to study it. And one of the things you need to know is how the industry works. What is an agent? What does an agent do? What is a manager? What does a manager do?
Or not do.
Or not do. How do you get one? How do you go about getting one? The horrible thing is the catch-22 that exists, because of course, you can't get into any kind of a show, whether it's a theatrical or film or television, because it's all run by the unions. You can't get in unless you're a union member. But on the other hand, you can't become a union member unless you got a job.
Right.
So it's like, well, wait a minute. This is a catch-22 here. How do I do this? Well, it's something called Taft-Hartley, and they do allow some people to Taft-Hartley in the first time. They don't have to join the union, but you have to get somebody that believes in you enough to still give you the job.
Right.
And so, it's a tough thing. And the first thing you got to do is make sure you're talented enough. And it really takes, dedication, studying, learning everything you can. I heard you asking Randy about, talking to kids and, what does it take to get kids, involved and everything. And I think, kids, amazingly, so many of these kids are so talented. I mean, I've seen kids that Randy has directed in shows that he's done for CYT and some other shows, where those kids are so incredibly talented. And they're dedicated, not just talented, but they're taking voice lessons and they're taking acting lessons and they're taking, and I think that for the community, like, community theaters, they need to be, standing behind those kids and helping those kids by giving them quality help, not just saying, "Oh yeah, we have a children's thing over here that you can come and get your kids involved in," and it's just nothing. It doesn't teach them anything. It's not difficult. It's just running around, becoming, let's all be fairies or something. It doesn't give them. They want something hard. They're craving for something that will be difficult, that will make them, learn about acting and what is acting all about and what does it take to be a good actor and what does it take to be a musical theater performer? Well, it takes everything. You have to dance, you have to act, you have to sing. And so you have to study all of those three things. And kids are a lot more resilient than people think. They don't have to be, they don't have to be just, given something that's real easy. No, they want something that's difficult. They want to be, what's the word? They want to be stretched and challenged. Yeah, they want all of that. And I see a lot of places that will start like a community theater thing for children, and it's just, doesn't give them anything like that. But really, you've got to have that talent, because let's face it, it's a very competitive situation, and you can't just go to your parents and say to them, Do you think I'm talented enough? Because your
No.
parents are always going to say yes. And unfortunately, I can't tell you. I've been in over 75 shows, but I can't tell you how many I've auditioned for.
Right.
Probably 350.
Right.
And you have to be able to accept no multiple times.
Right.
And so you've got to be strong enough, and you have to believe enough in yourself to know that if somebody says no to you, well, that's not the end of it.
That's right.
That's just that person's opinion. If you still believe in yourself and still think that you're a talented person, and you know what, it doesn't always. It's not always in being a professional,
Right.
because, quite frankly, it's wonderful to be in the professional theater, and it's wonderful to be a professional entertainer, and of course, most people want that, but it's also great to be in the community theater and to know that you made somebody laugh tonight. That's, it may have only been one person. I'll never forget this guy, one of the funniest guys on the face of the planet, a really good friend of mine, Bill Martin, and he wrote Harry and the Hendersons, and he also wrote Third Planet from the Sun. Really funny guy. And, he's done wonderful things, written wonderful songs and written funny things. He's one of the funniest guys that ever lived. And he used to tell me, he says, I get as much thrill just being at a party and entertaining two people as I do entertaining a room of thousands.
Wow.
And, that's really where it's at, because, it's always, that chance you have an opportunity to make one person smile, make one person happy, or even make one person cry, if that's what you're trying to get them to do. And so, sometimes I think people feel like, well, I'm really nothing. I just do community theater. Hey, I've seen community theaters that were as good as some of the most professional theaters I've been involved with. So I never have that opinion. I've seen very professional amateur theater, and I think that the people that do it should feel great about what they do and shouldn't ever think that what they do is less than nothing because maybe they're not getting paid for it.
Right.
I don't think that's always the indication of whether something is going to be good or not, is whether or not the people are being paid to do it. Of course, we'd all like to get paid, and we'd all like to be able to pay those people, but unfortunately it doesn't always work out that way, because most community theaters are kind of struggling and don't have a lot of money to pay the actors and everybody. So it takes a lot of dedication and a lot of free time and that kind of thing, which a lot of people don't have. But anyway, I think you really got to sit back and say to yourself, am I talented enough to be a professional? Because that's the first and last question you're going to be asking yourself at the beginning and end of each day.
Wow. Well, it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned the whole issue of networking, because I think we know that, but people don't normally tell that. And my pet peeve is a lot of these professional dance acting studios that are really just paper mills, just there to make money. And I wish they'd just be more honest about, look, we can't guarantee you anything. You got to work on your skills. We can work with that, but we can't guarantee you. You have to do these things. And I've never once heard them talk about that networking aspect, that you really have to become invested in and become, almost like a real estate agent, right? You got to live and breathe it.
Right.
The whole networking aspect.
Right.
And I've never heard anyone say that. They may know that. I've never seen anybody vocalize that.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
It's so true, because I don't like it either when somebody comes along and says, come to our school and we'll train you how to become the best thing since sliced bread. Well, first of all, it's not just your talent, as I said before. It's also this incredible thing of luck. I mean, my God, we all know of some entertainer, whether they be a singer or a dancer or an actor, that where their skills were somewhat, precarious. I mean, somewhat limited, and yet they had a huge career.
Yes.
Well, why is that? Did Daddy buy them their career? Were they, just in the right place at the right time? Were they just, very, very attractive, but really couldn't they act their way out of a paper bag? I mean, there's so many different variations on why somebody makes it in this business. And it's unfortunate. I think it's very unfortunate that sometimes it's nothing more than, just looks. I really appreciated the fact that even in this thing, American Idol, for example, that, even though I think that that guy, that started it out that, everybody hated, that he, used to tell people you're too fat. But then I think he actually came off of that a bit because he saw how horrible that was. And now we've seen this recent episode with Rex Reed, complaining about that actress that has made a movie recently and calling her a fat pig. And a lot of people, realize that your talent is, comes from deep within, and you can make it. If you're talented, you can make it if you're fat or thin or tall or short or black or white or whatever. You just have to believe in yourself, and you have to do your homework. I call it your homework. You have to learn about the business and learn about what the business is all about. And then you have to network. You have to go out, meet people, talk to people. It's just like getting a regular job. I wouldn't go in and, for example, I wouldn't go in and interview for a job with Xerox, for example, knowing nothing about Xerox. I mean, the first thing I would do would be to find out everything about Xerox I possibly could. So that when I went in, I knew who the CEO was and the COO, and that I knew all the people that work. I know what they do. I know how they make their money. I know what their last, annual return said. I know about them so that I'm able to discuss that, somewhat with the person that's interviewing me. And that's the same way it is with getting a job. I wouldn't go and audition for a role at even the Crighton, not knowing about the Crighton, not knowing what the Crighton was or who you are.
But some people do. And it's not just, it's not just theater. I mean, it's job interviews, it's everything.
Right.
And, the prep just doesn't seem to be there anymore. And
right.
and you've seen it. I've seen it too.
Yeah.
And some people have a natural talent. They can skate by. They can tell whatever. They can understand. They can look at some. I have friends that they can look at someone and they know instantly about that person, what they like, dislike, that kind of thing. And if you have that gift, great, you can skate by. And if you don't,
very many
not many people do.
And I think it's important because it shows it's another side of you. It doesn't just show how great you can sing or great you can dance or great you can act. It also shows how smart you are and how willing to learn you are and how willing you are to be part of the group. Because if you don't know anything about the group, then maybe you're not a person that's willing to be part of the group. And, especially in the community theater, you want people to be part of the group. You don't want somebody coming around here that, thinks they're so, highfalutin, they want the lead and they're only going to do the lead and they're not going to ever take, they're never going to do a chorus part and they just want the lead. Nobody wants that guy as part of their group. You want a guy that's willing to do anything and everything and get involved. That's the kind of thing that theaters want. And if you're that kind of person, then come on down and, you'll get a lead at some point and you'll get those kind of good parts, just be part of the group.
Right.
And then you can be, part of the greatness of the theater.
What haven't you done that you'd love to do?
I would love to conduct a symphony orchestra.
Conduct a symphony orchestra?
I just have always had this thing in my head, and I am not kidding you. I remember distinctly sitting in a little coffee shop next to the law school that I went to. I was just about to go in to take a test. And God, those tests in law school were so hard. And I was sitting there thinking about going into take this test, and I thought to myself, God, why did I go to law school? Why didn't I become an orchestra conductor? I really wish I had become an orchestra conductor. And I don't know what it is, but something about that power of being able to stand up there. And I love music anyway, but being able to stand up there and, direct this whole symphony and everything, it just thrills me. I just would love to do that.
Any particular music?
Probably classical.
Classical,
yeah. I love classical music. I love all kinds of music. There isn't any kind of music I don't love, but But if it was a big symphony, then of course I'd love to do. Or it could be even something like, Rhapsody in Blue, Gershwin, or something like that. New American music, it could be something like that too. Yeah, that's what I like to do.
Do you like to compose music?
I do. I do like to compose music. I haven't done it much in my life, but I do like to compose. And I love to write. Writing is one of my, I think writing is probably one of my better talents. I'm really good at it, and I like to do it. Matter of fact, over the last maybe 10, 20 years, I've really made most of my money by writing. I've written something called The Core Story. It's a PowerPoint presentation for businesses, and so I do a lot of that. I write business plans and grants and that kind of thing. So writing has always been, but I've always wanted to maybe write the quintessential novel or write. I'd love to write screenplays or even musical comedies. I wrote a musical comedy when I was in high school. And we actually sold it to a group of Japanese businessmen who wanted to put it on in Japan. And it was called The World Almanac and Book of Facts. And it was a musical based on 6 or 7 or 8 editors sitting in a room deciding what they were going to put into the World Almanac that year. So, for example, one of the songs was, "This is what to do if you cannot get a birth certificate." That was one of the songs. And,
but they bought this.
They bought it. It was really good.
You are a salesperson.
I mean, it was really, really good. And I'm not kidding you. We performed it at my high school. It was a great musical. It had wonderful music.
Yeah. And
I don't have a copy of it. I would just kill to have a copy. Yeah, I don't have a copy.
So somebody must have a copy.
Maybe. And it was one of the greatest things. And I mean, I did it when I was in high school, so I would love to do that. Matter of fact, it's funny. We used to finagle those high school guys so much that my friend Bobby Goodman and I that did a lot of musical theater together in those days, he was the one I tap danced with when I was 3. We talked to the school, my high school, into letting us teach musical theater. So here we were, juniors in high school, and we were teaching other kids because they let us teach a whole class on musical theater.
Wow.
So and I love to teach. I have taught acting at the college level. I've taught acting to children and to adults, and I have taught piano and voice. So I've done a lot of teaching throughout my career. And I've also taught, I used to teach down at the Art Institute. I've also taught publishing and getting into the entertainment business and how to get into the entertainment business and why gold records don't always yield fortunes and, lots of different kinds of, things in the entertainment business. But anyway, that's something that I certainly would like to do. But there's a lot of things I'd like to do.
What do you do when you have time off? There's such a thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I would love to do more traveling. I love to travel and I love to cruise. But, just from a monetary standpoint, not being able to afford it, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. We have a big lawsuit pending, and so I'm hoping we're going to get some money there so we can go traveling. But I love to cruise. I love the ocean. I mean, Randy told you that's how we met. We were, because we love the water, we were supposed to go down to Galveston. Then we said, well, that water's not available. What other water is there around here? But we have been on a number of cruises, and I love to cruise. I love the Caribbean. I would just love to be able to open my French doors and walk right out onto the beach. I love that. But, knowing me, I'd probably go down, get a little place to live in Jamaica or Grand Cayman or something, and go and start a theater, because that's the kind of gal I am. I can just see it now.
You can find this beautiful place. Okay, let's go start a theater.
Exactly. That's exactly what I do. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Oh, dear. Well, we'll definitely have to have you come back again. But I'm going to ask you the question I asked Randy. If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get to the pearly gates?
I think God would probably say, "You're finally here." And that may seem strange to some people, but I have been legally dead twice.
Wow.
And so I think he's probably just going to say, "You're finally here. You're finally here."
Yeah. And you don't have to do law. You could direct if you like.
Oh, no. I wouldn't do any law up there. That's for dang sure. They'd probably throw me down you know where. They know you're a lawyer. Yeah.
We could do Mr. Holland's opus. It'll be your opus,
That's
right?
That's right.
Thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me.